now give the floor to His Excellency Vladimir Yermakov, head of the delegation of the Russian Federation. You have the floor.
Спасибо.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to know that we fully share the views voiced by the previous speaker, the representative of the People's Republic of China, our nearest neighbor and strategic partner. We particularly regret the position of our U.S. colleagues. It seems that they have lost even their diplomatic skills and have gone to the point where, in addition to undermining international agreements, they have begun to physically block our work, for some reason deciding that they can decide who of us, among us, is worthy of coming to our headquarters here in New York and who isn't worthy. This discrimination is absolutely unacceptable, and we will continue working to ensure that the Secretariat rapidly addresses this issue. A striking difference of the positions of Russia and China from the position of the US and the countries of the West is that we, in our principled approaches, remain steadfast. And we always comply with the norms of good behavior on the international arena. We don't abandon our obligations, and we don't undermine international agreements. I'm convinced that the absolute majority of you here is well aware of Russia's constructive approaches which seek to ensure equal and indivisible security for all states without exception. That is why today I will not read out Russia's prepared statement. I propose that you read the statement as it is made available. I will simply touch upon a few of the key points. Let's work just with the facts. We're all aware now that even back in the 90s of the last century, Washington adopted decisions to leave the ABM Treaty, to destroy the biological and chemical conventions, the Conventional Armed Forces in Europe Treaty, and the INF Treaty. At the same time, back then, their unique national entity for arms control was also dismantled. Thus, on the threshold of the century, a destructive aberration of some sort took place in the minds in Washington. And if this destructive tendency continues, then we will shortly find ourselves in a situation where here in the First Committee, we no longer have anything to discuss. There will no longer be an INF treaty. There will no longer be a START treaty. There will no longer be the BTWC or the CWC. Instead, due to the U.S.'s destructive actions, both the JCPOA and the CTBT, and even the very dialogue regarding a WMD-free zone in the Middle East, as nuclear weapons are being placed on the territory of other states, and as training exercises continue regarding the use of nuclear weapons, which the U.S. is giving to its non-nuclear partners, and the NPT, all of this will be threatened. A very worrying prospect, surely you must agree. And this is precisely why Russia insists on the implementation of our constructive initiatives, which are supported by all countries of the CSTO, the SCO, BRICS, and all countries of the non-aligned movement. In other words, the vast majority of UN member states support these initiatives, and those are the countries that will ensure the future of world development. Let's briefly go through our proposals and do so comparatively. We propose strengthening the NPT rather than destroying it as the US does. We propose abandoning the placement of nuclear weapons on the territory of other states and renouncing the practice of providing training to non-nuclear states and carrying out nuclear strikes, as the U.S. does. We propose extending the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty START instead of abandoning this last remaining nuclear binding agreement in the sphere of nuclear disarmament, which is what the U.S. is doing. We're proposing a moratorium on the placement of short and intermediate ground-based missiles rather than stepping up those missiles as the U.S. is doing in contravention of the INF, which they have effectively dismantled. We propose ensuring the immediate entry into force of the CTBT, rather than refusing to ratify it and preparing a nuclear testing site to resume nuclear testing like the U.S. is doing. We propose starting a dialogue on a WMD-free zone in the Middle East, rather blocking that dialogue, which is what the U.S. is doing. We propose a full-fledged implementation of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action on the Iranian nuclear program rather than a blatant violation of obligations under that plan and punishing those who don't implement it as the U.S. is doing. We propose prohibiting the placement of nuclear or any other weapons in outer space and the use of force of any kind in outer space, instead of inflaming and fueling an arms race in outer space like the U.S. is doing. We are proposing strengthening the Convention on the Prohibition of Biological Weapons instead of undermining it, as the U.S. is doing, having rejected the verification and installing its military biological facilities all around the world. Due to a lack of time, I'm going to have to cut the list off there, although I could keep going. Overall, we are inspired by the fact that Russia's constructive proposals are supported by the absolute majority of UN member states. However, we're worried that our U.S. colleagues, our European colleagues, who once loudly proclaimed their principles when it came to international affairs, have essentially lost their sovereignty and are sitting with their tail between their legs, afraid to reject instructions from Washington and from Brussels, even in areas where it runs counter to their national security interests. We all need a positive agenda. As you all know,
Apologies. May I please ask the distinguished representative to conclude his statement?
Thank you, Chair. I will conclude. Just a couple of last words. I propose that we take this positive note and use that to continue our discussions here in the First Committee on a positive note. Well, under the condition, of course, that the host country of UN headquarters will not, in a cowardly and unlawful fashion, bar us from accessing our common headquarters. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation for his statement.